Hello and welcome to Matt's Tech Show. Today, I want to talk about the 12 Pro. Now, in the title, I said you shouldn't buy the iPhone 12 Pro. And you shouldn't. You should buy the iPhone 11 Pro. Now, there are a few categories that I think are essential for a smartphone. Performance, connectivity, or how it works as a phone, and 4G connections, etc. Design, cameras, MagSafe for the iPhone 12 Pro, obviously we'll need to talk about it, and battery life. I'm talking about all of these in relation to the 12 Pro, so let's get started. So, starting off with performance. Antutu benchmark shows there is not a lot of a difference between these phones, but let's go through that. When it comes to the difference between the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 11 Pro, you're dealing with a difference of Antutu benchmark score of 52 to 58. Now, I would argue that is not a big difference. I mean, 52 to 58 for the price you're paying. And yes, the iPhone 12 Pro has 6 gigs of RAM, but on iOS, that's not as big of an issue as you'd think. Having 4 gigabytes of RAM on the iPhone 11 Pro, you almost never notice it. In fact, what I've noticed much more is the fact that the phone is fast. And so you're paying a lot for a small increase in performance. And the RAM really isn't something you notice. Now, the next subject is the one that they mentioned like 5 times in the presentation, or 500 is what it felt like. 5G. Let me start by saying you do not need 5G. But why am I so adamant about this? Because, to be honest, 5G isn't that important yet, and carriers know this. If you look at the iPhone 11 Pro, or the iPhone 11 line, and you look at what the best-selling phones of 2020 were, or at least the most activated on Christmas Day, it was the iPhone 11, a 4G phone from last year, and carriers know this. And they're going to be more focused on keeping their current customers than a bunch of new people who just happen to have 5G. So they're going to be more focused on making sure their 4G is good, whilst improving their 5G a little bit. So if you have a 4G phone, you're likely to get a better experience than trying to use 5G. And if you're in America and you're trying to use millimeter wave, we've all seen the benchmarks or the speed tests. And yes, if you happen to be in line of sight of a millimeter wave antenna, sure, you can get incredible internet speeds, but that's a rarity. And to be honest, I'm not sure what you would use that kind of internet connection for. Okay then, what about the regular 5G? You'll see speed improvements some of the time. But if you live in a rural area or somewhere where they don't have 5G or your carrier doesn't support it that well, you might not be getting a very good 5G signal at all, if at all. And, well, you're much more likely to get a good 4G signal. And a lot of YouTubers have been talking about how the speeds on fast 4G are better than 5G. So I would argue it's not that important. Okay, how about design? I prefer the design of the 11 Pro, but the design of the iPhone 12 is nice. The design looks great on the iPhone 12 line. You know, the 12 Pro with the flat sides, you know, that looks great. It's very reminiscent of the iPhone 5, which is a really nice design. But there are compromises that came with that design. And yes, it's thinner and lighter, but I prefer heavier if it gives me a bigger battery. And I prefer the way the iPhone 11 Pro feels in the hand. I mean, those flat sides aren't as comfortable as the curved sides of any of the 11 line or the 10S or the 10. I much prefer the curved steel as opposed to the flat steel. It's much nicer. So how about cameras? I mean, we are talking about Pro phones, right? So how do the cameras on the 11 Pro stack up to the 12 Pro? Well, if you look at reviews, you can see that the 11 Pro stacks up well, but I'm not one to just look at reviews. So I'll be showing some pictures of Oxford in the snow. Looking at these pictures, I'd ask, how much better do you want a camera to be? I mean, these pictures are incredible, and they came from a smartphone. And how much better can a smartphone get, especially year to year? The iPhone 11 Pro has incredible cameras, especially for the price. And you're paying a lot more for something you might not notice. And if you're looking for video, well, you can check out the other videos on my channel, of course. The cameras on the 11 Pro for video, they're really good. 4K 60 looks great on this phone. And for the iPhone 12 Pro, yes, there are some small increases in a few areas. But as big as the differences a lot of other YouTubers are making it out to be, I would argue it's not that big. I mean, especially we've come a long way since the days of the S3 Mini's camera, which is terrible, or the Galaxy S8 cameras, which are moderately okay, but 4K 60 on a smartphone was big, and now we've got good 4K 60 on a smartphone. Okay, how about the notch? The dreaded, awful, evil notch. It's barely different. It honestly isn't different. The bezels around the screen, you know, these bits around here, yeah, they're slightly smaller. You're not going to notice it. And to be honest, even if you were to notice it, few days in, it's not going to be a different experience. You're getting basically the same experience between these two phones. And to be honest, how much extra you want to pay to be able to occasionally look at your phone, which is probably in the case if you're sane, and say, oh hey, my bezels are a tiny bit smaller. It's not going to change your experience. It's still functionally the same. So I would say the notch is the same. The bezels are a tiny bit smaller. It's really not a reason to go with the 12 Pro with the 11 Pro. MagSafe, 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 MagSafe. The thing they talked about a lot in the presentation at Apple, I don't think you need it. If you're watching this video, it's highly likely you already have an iPhone, and you probably have a lot of lightning cables already. And the truth is, something like MagSafe, at some point it might become necessary. But if you already have lightning cables, do you really want to invest extra when you've just bought an expensive new phone just to be able to put a magnetic charger on the back of your phone when you could just plug it in normally? I wouldn't say that's worth it. Okay, so how about battery life? I mean, if we're talking about charging, we've got to talk about battery. It's worse on the 12 Pro. The battery on the 12 Pro is smaller, and even if there's slightly more efficiency, for that little bit of 5G signal you're getting, the battery life is worse. On the 11 Pro, I've seen 9 hours of screen on time in some cases. And to be honest, the 11 Pro has really good battery. And with a 3000 milliamp hour battery, it's really good. And to be honest, I would really recommend an 11 Pro over a 12 Pro just from the battery point of view, because battery is better on the older phone. And, well, when it came to this thinner, flatter, nicer design, one of the things that came with that was that smaller battery. And you will suffer from it. So I really recommend the 11 Pro in that regard. So what's the conclusion? You really should be buying the 11 Pro over the 12 Pro. It's better in a few ways, and it is cheaper. And how much cheaper? You can get the iPhone 12 Pro from Apple's website for $1,000 US or $999 or £999. And if you look at the used market or Amazon Renewed, then you can find price differences of $200 or £200, depending on whether you're a Brit. And that's a big difference. And my question would be, how much are you paying for that difference? And is it worth it? Is it worth it to have a new network that in a lot of cases you can't use, slightly better performance, a new design that's thinner and lighter, which sacrifices better battery life, a notch in user experience that's basically the same, and access to accessories that you can't use, as well as a battery life that's objectively worse? Really, I would say you should buy the iPhone 11 Pro. It's an incredible phone, which presents incredible value. The iPhone 12 Pro is a great phone, but when it comes to the value proposition, I would argue that the value is worse. But those are my thoughts. Please mention in the comments below if you think anything else. And I'd like to say thanks for watching. This has been Matt's Tech Show. Please like and subscribe.